must remember. It's hard sometimes to remember, but that's how we heal. It's important to do that as a nation. That's why we're here today. Between sundown and dusk, let us shine the lights in the darkness along the sacred pool of reflection. Remember all whom we lost. Those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. We'll honor them by becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind, and for our country. Amen.
It's President Biden during his inaugural address on Wednesday, leading a moment of silent prayer for the more than 400,000 Americans who've died because of coronavirus. Before that, he was speaking at the vigil he led earlier in the week for those victims. In the United States, someone dies of COVID-19 every 26 seconds, a staggering death rate that has enveloped the country with profound grief. Joining us now is Rabi Steve Leader. He serves as the senior rabbi of Wilshire Boulevard Temple, the first synagogue established in the city of Los Angeles. He's also the author of the new book about handling grief titled The Beauty of What Remains, How Our Greatest Fear Becomes Our Greatest Gift. Rabbi, good morning. It's great to have you with us in this national moment of grieving. We hadn't really had one until that event on Tuesday night at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, when we stopped collectively to think about the more than 400,000 people have died. And I'm interested to hear your view of grief right now, because we've had taken from us, in addition to so many other things, the rituals of grieving, saying goodbye at a bedside in a hospital. That's now been replaced by FaceTime calls with a loved one, funerals. You can't assemble and remember the person who passed. So what are you telling the members of your congregation about grief in the age of coronavirus?
Well, I think that grief in the age of coronavirus doesn't really change the nature of grief, but it intensifies it. And I think the first important thing to remember about grief, despite what my generation and yours were taught about grief having stages, that grief is a non-linear thing. I say in the book that anyone who thinks the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line doesn't understand grief. Grief is much more like waves, and so we have to approach it, to extend that metaphor, as if a massive wave is coming at us, and we really have two choices, which is to stand up against it, to hold our ground and say, I am stronger and more powerful than this wave. And we all know what happens then. We get thrown over and upside down, and we're gasping for air and afraid. And the other choice, the better choice, is when you have this wave of grief coming at you, to lie down, let it wash over you, float with it, just float with it until you can stand up again. And I think that what the president did for us in that speech was grant permission to acknowledge the grief we're feeling collectively as a country, to let it wash over us, to sit with us and float with it, and then to know we're going to stand up again and lead more honorable and noble lives as a result of that pain.
Yeah, because so much of the last year has been about politics and the fight over what's being done and what's not being done to fight coronavirus, that we haven't stopped collectively as a nation to grieve until this week, quite frankly. And you've also spoken, Rabbi, about different kinds of loss in this time, which is, you know, children missing some of the milestones in their lives at school or a dance class or on a ball field. There's loss in our country, there's loss around the world beyond the loss of life that we've seen.
It's absolutely true. We've, all of us, lost our freedom. We've all lost our sense of invulnerability. Many of us have lost businesses, money, jobs. We've lost the right for our children to be in school, which is really, we all know where they belong. And maybe worst of all, we have lost just the fundamental most beautiful thing about being human, which is touch, which is to hold and be held by the people we love. You know, I have an 87-year-old mother in Minneapolis. I haven't hugged my mother in a year. And so we have all suffered loss, whether loss of a loved one's life or not isn't really the question. We have to really make room for our loss, and we have to grieve, and we have to also focus on something else, which I think is extremely important. The thing about loss is it also strips away a lot of nonsense. And I don't know about you, but I have found this pandemic to have a very beautiful upside, not just a terrible downside. And I don't mean to dismiss the downside for a moment. I'm in the cemeteries every day of the week right now. But there is also a very beautiful upside. First of all, it has reminded us, I think, that no matter how many times we say I love you, and no matter how many times we hold and are held by the people we love, it's never enough. It's never enough. And I think we've all learned what we knew but sometimes forgot, which is that it's who, not what we have, that matters. And sometimes that's easy to forget. But this pandemic has come as a very powerful reminder. Death comes as a very powerful reminder to cherish life and to cherish the beauty of what remains, no matter what's been stripped away.
This is grief that is not just being felt in the U.S., but around the world. Katty K, last question, final question of the morning.
Rabbi, thank you for that. I think a lot of us needed to hear that. Can you also talk to me about loneliness? Because I think a lot of people are really lonely through this. And I wonder what you say to your congregants, like your mother, who hasn't seen you for a year and is sitting there by themselves.
Well, this is very much in line with focusing on the beauty of what remains. Let's look at what's possible. I'll tell you, there's a very powerful phrase in the Talmud which says, the prisoner cannot free himself. The prisoner cannot free himself. When we feel isolated and alone, we have to reach out. And when we reach out, yes, we will be disappointed by those who do not reach back, but there will be many, many who will reach back to us and take our hand and help to lift us from our loneliness and our suffering. So it's very important. No one endures pain better alone. No one. So it's very important that we reach out to the people we love. Hey, I need you. I need to hear from you. I need a call. I need a Zoom. I need a FaceTime. Reach out. No one goes through things like we are all going through better alone. We go through them better together. And I think that was a big part of the president's message.
Yeah. The book is The Beauty of What Remains, How Our Greatest Fear Becomes Our Greatest Gift. Rabbi Steve Leader, thank you so much. And gosh, Willie, as we close out the week, it's a lot of grieving and a lot of moving forward and repairing, but a return to truth and a return to American values. And in light of everything we've gone through, there's a lot of work to be done to bring all people together.
Absolutely, and what beautiful words by Rabbi Leader that we can all take with us this weekend. The page turned from one president to another.